Excel can be your lifesaver. Discover the power of Excel to build game-changing business analytics dashboards. With Excel's robust functions like basic syntax, trim, COUNTIF, and pivot, say goodbye to data chaos and make data cleaning and validation a walk in the park. Craft user-friendly, impactful dashboards with ease using conditional formatting and KPI metrics. But that's not all. Pivot tables and charts are your secret weapons for dynamic, interactive dashboards. We will reveal how to master them complete with slicers and timelines. Integrate data from multiple sources and keep your dashboards updated, error-free, and secure. Plus, with cloud tools like Google Sheets or Power BI, real-time insights are just a click away. So why wait? Let's jump right in.
Introduction to Excel dashboards. Let's look at what is the functionality of Excel dashboards. So what exactly does this mean, right? What is the Excel dashboard that we keep talking about? So an Excel dashboard is a basic visual representation of data that provides a quick at-a-glance view of key information, trends and insights. Now just imagine that if you are in a corporate setup, right, you will be working on problem statements. You'll be working out on things to figure out a solution of a problem that is there, right? So basically everything that we do in Excel revolves around solving a particular problem. Be it analyzing the efficiency of a team, be it finding out what are the visualizations required for a particular product to be sold out in the market, what is the product demand fit that we keep talking about, right? So all these aspects can be covered up in Excel. Now, there's a point to be noted, or you may have this question, that why is Excel so important? Why don't we use SQL or any other bigger database managers, right? Why do we have to stick with Excel? So the simple answer to it is that Excel is the most basic, easy to use application that is out there. You do not need any sort of coding to having to learn about Microsoft Excel. It's basic key to key features, right? You just have to enter a sort of data in terms of rows and columns, find what you need to analyze, and you're good to go. So that is why Excel dashboard plays a vital role in key visualization of data and provides a quick at a glance overview of key information, trends and insights. So what are the key features when we talk about this Excel dashboard? First is data visualization. Now it involves a lot of various steps like graphs, charts and tables. So visualization is the key, right? For example, if you have to understand the data, if you have to look at the data, right, and you are providing these solutions to a problem statement to your managers, senior managers, or people from the board, right, board of directors. So in that case, they do not want, or they are not interested in looking out at raw data or the analyzing things in your workbook. They are more interested to look at the final visual representations, which is why it becomes essential to know that charts, graphs and tables, they become essential for analyzing and visualizing those aspects, right? Second is the interactivity, right? These dashboards that we will be creating, they have things called as filters, slicers. We'll know about that because we'll create it, and user-friendly controls. Now, as a person from, let's say, a board of director, right, I would just be interested in noticing, okay, if I have 5 product lines in my company, I would be interested in knowing that what is the revenue that each product line is getting me, right? I'll be interested in knowing about that. I would not want all 4 product lines at once, right? I would have a particular filter setup in the dashboard itself, right? Also, I would not have time to scroll through multiple Excel files. So everything should be at one place in one particular sheet. So that is why dashboards become easier, because you would have number of different visualizations in Excel, right, in that particular dashboard. Then comes real-time data. So it would have automatic updates. It would have various data connections, so that if you have one slicer that is in play, one filter that is in play, you can change all the aspects that you want to look at, right? So this is the same way, right? For example, if I take an example of cricket, now if I want to analyze the performance of Virat Kohli, right, I would be looking at his runs, his trend of the past 5-6 years, number of games he has played in the 5-6 years. Or I would also be looking at what are the number of boundaries he have put in, number of fours that he has hit, number of six he has hit, number of singles he has taken. So all these aspects I will be taking care of. I would be noticing it, right? And also in this particular scenario, I would also be interested in knowing what are the type of balls in which he gets out, right? Is the ball that is pitching in that hurts him the most, or the ball that is pitching outside off leg? So all these things are the ones that we will be looking at when we talk about data. So it becomes essential to notice that data is being generated. It is in the form of numbers, and I want to make meaningful connections out of these data. So that is why real-time data updates, in which automatically the dashboard is being updated. It does not have to do with you have to feed in the information or put that hard work again and again to build that data. That is not what the aim of this dashboard is. To automate things is one of the most important aspects of building the dashboard. Then customization, right? If you have 5 board members and each one of them has a different set of thinking in terms of what they want to look at in the data, right? So this particular aspect should be tailored to them. You have to build that customized dashboard for them, because everybody would have different parameters to measure, right? Taking the example of cricket again, some of the analysts would want to look at the data of how many dot balls did Virat Kohli had in his career. The other one would be more interested in the percentage of boundaries he has hit in the total balls that he has played. It may be the scenario in which you would look at the total number scored in the number of balls rather than just looking at the dot balls percentage. So there are different types of analysis anyone would want to make out. So treating that as a whole, analyzing, tailoring it to the specific needs and preferences is also one vital aspect when we talk about building that Excel dashboard. So why use Excel dashboards, right? Again, it also is in the way it benefits us when we talk about have clarity in terms of data. More clarity with the data means more informed decisions for a company. More informed decisions, they are more likely to have growth, right? So data clarity is one thing that is vital. Also, for the fact that companies all across the globe are now heavily dependent on data. After the whole digital revolutionization, both in the developing nations and the developed nations, data is one key aspect in which everybody wants to grow. So data clarity, right? It simplifies the complex data into digestible visuals. Now, I have used this word digestible here. Why? Because you may be visualizing this data to a complete layman. Maybe the shareholders of the company, common people who have no access to the data, but just the visualizations, just the visuals. So for them, this dashboard or this final visualization becomes the most important key. Then is decision support. It helps in making informed decisions. As I just mentioned, that number of choices are now heavily dependent or are heavily backed by data. Then is the efficiency. So building those dashboards, it saves a ton of time through automation and the real-time updates, right? So it saves a ton of time. Then is professional reporting. It creates polished, professional looking reports, right? Report building is one important aspect that if you're a fresher right out of college, or if you are in a job early stages in your career, you would have noticed, or if you have not noticed, you would be knowing that most of your life from now would be spent by using Excel. So building those dashboards, professional looking dashboards, is a must. And we will be looking at building those dashboards in the later half of this particular session. What are the use cases? If you ask me, it is sales and marketing. Tracking the sales performance, building those marketing campaigns is very, very essential. Then is financial analysis, budgeting, expense tracking, financial forecasting, right? This is one of the most important aspects in which Excel is heavily used. You talk about big fours, right? EY, PwC, Deloitte, all these companies, all these consulting firms or these auditing firms, they have heavy dependence on Excel because they have to track the expenses of a particular company, build profit and loss statements, income statements, balance sheets, cash flow statements, and all that, right? So they have to look Excel in a much more broader way. If you are someone who wants to be a consultant, right, then knowing this particular part in which you have to build dashboard is very crucial for your growth in your career, right? Financial forecasting, right? Getting the trends out of that data, then analyzing that particular trend and predicting what would happen in the future. There are some events that are unpredictable. For example, COVID-19. Nobody predicted that. But there are some aspects, right? Seasonality is there. For example, if there is, for a company, for a product-based company, Diwali or the festive season, November, December are most, October, November, December are the most festive seasons around, right? The product may be highly valuable during that time. People would be more and more buying your product, right? And this would happen next year around during the same time because it's the season that would depend, right? So knowing that, forecasting that particular thing, getting prepared for that particular sale, it all comes from data. Hence, data becomes really crucial for you to understand these aspects. Then comes project management, right? Imagine you are running a team of say 30, 40 people. To know how is everybody performing on a day-to-day basis, it is very important to know, to build those dashboards in, to know the overall progress of the team, the overall efficiency of the team. How is each and every individual performing? So all these aspects, right, you have to take care, or you have to look at when you talk about project management. Progress monitoring, right? So if your number of projects that are being taken up in your particular, let's say, company or a particular team, then what is the resource allocation that is there in terms of money, in terms of human capital? How many individuals would be required to do that particular task? What is the amount of money that is required to do that particular project? So all that project management aspects comes into play using those dashboards as well. Your life in corporate would become really easy once you know how to build those dashboards from scratch. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. Next, we'll talk about the various types of functions. So before getting into building that dashboard, it's important to know a few functions that are there that helps in data cleaning as well as organizing the data. So we'll look at 4 such examples of various functions that are there and how to use them, right? So first, just let's look at what exactly functions are, right? Just to brush up on what functions are. So they are basically a predefined instructions that perform specific calculations in a particular order in a spreadsheet, right? So knowing that it performs specific calculations in a particular order, right? What does that mean? So it has a set of functions, right? Set of basic steps that are there that are required. Maybe you want the sum of various values, right? Maybe that you want an average of some values. You want maximum of the values that are there, right? Maxima, minima, all those things, right? So you just need to type out basic formulas that are there known as functions and you'll get your desired result, right? For example, the basic syntax of a function is equal to, that signifies the start of function. Then is the name of that formula, name of the particular function that you want, right? In this case, it is written as average. You can have sum, SUM, you can have count, COUNT. You have different types of such formulas that has different calculations involved, right? Then you have open parenthesis and the range of cells that are there, right? For example, in this case, the range of cell would be from $50,220 to $56,445. So the range would be cell. So this signifies the cell number. So in this case, the cell number would be E15 to E20. This would be the range of that particular options that I have set, right? So this is what exactly the functions are. So now let's look at the various types of functions. The first one is COUNTIF. Now what does this do? This function counts the number of cells that are there that match a particular condition, right? A specific condition, right? So the syntax is equal to COUNTIF, open parenthesis, range, then condition, right? So this counts the number of cells that are an exact match to that particular thing, and it gives you the number of counts, such counts. Then is length of function. So a function that returns the length of a text string, right? So if my word is of 5 letters, so how many letters are there, how many spaces it's being used, it will give me the length of the exact same thing. Then is left and right. So in this, a function returns specific number of characters from the left side or the right side in a particular cell. So what you have to do is equal to sign, then write the name of the formula, that is left or right, open parenthesis, which cell I'm selecting, then the number of characters that are there. So you just have to give that. Then is concatenate. So it combines multiple text cells into a single cell. So it starts with equal to, concatenate, open parenthesis, cell 1, cell 2, right? So this is about concatenate. Then is a trim function. Now this is one of the most important functions that are used. So if there are any extra spaces or unwanted spaces there, you can just write equal to trim cell 1. So all the unwanted space that are before the particular string starts, it will all remove that. So now let's look at how to use those different types of functions that we just talked about in a data set. Now here I have a data set of movie title and languages that I mentioned. So there are a lot of different movie titles that are represented and the language in which it is, right? This is a dummy data set. The answers may or may not be correct in terms of the language. Pardon me on that front. But in terms of knowing what functions to use, let's look at the total number of movies that are there in French, English, and Italian, right? So in this case, brushing back what we just learned, let's look at what we can use, right? Here we have to use COUNTIF function. So what I'll do is I'll click on this cell because I want the answer in this particular cell. I'll write equal to, then I'll write the name of the formula, that is COUNTIF, then open parenthesis. So Excel is quite smart in this case. So it knows that you want to enter a function. It already tells about, okay, the range is there, right? So the range for my analysis is B2 to B22, right? So I've already mentioned it. Then it says, what is the criteria? I want English. So I'll write, what do I want? Yeah, English, close parenthesis. Now I'll click enter. Now we'll notice that it says 0, but I can see in the data set that there are some English that is mentioned. So why is that the case? Now going back to the thing, if I do not use the criteria in inverted commas, then it will not give me the accurate result because this is a particular string that I want to showcase, right? So if I put here the inverted commas and then close parenthesis and then I put enter, it will give me the result that 5 is the number of times I can see English there. So what are the total movies in English in this particular data set? That is 5. So we can count it 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So to cross verify, this is accurate. Then the same thing I will do for French. So I'll write equal to COUNTIF, open, select the range, that is this, B2 to B22, comma, inverted comma, French, close parenthesis, right? So this is also 5. Now I go with Italian, 0 equal to COUNTIF, open parenthesis, the range is P2, comma, right? So it is repeated 6 times. So it will give me exactly how many times this number has been repeated. Then we'll talk about the trim function. Now, the trim function, what it does, it removes the unwanted space that is there, right? For example, we can see that there's a lot of empty spaces in front of it. If I have to make it, you have to clean the data, right? You have to make it consistent, right? So in terms of data cleaning, what I'll do, I'll just select this particular column, or better way, I can just make another column of movie title 1, right? Now I can just write the thing equal to trim, then the text, right, and close parenthesis, right? Now this was correct, it will give me correct response, but what I can do now is I can just drag and drop. So what it does, it automatically understands that this is one case that I have taken. Now the next one, it will take this, right? So you can see if it is A2, in this case it will be A3, in this case it will be A11. So it automatically understands the function. If you just drag and drop from the bottommost part of the particular cell to the required result, right, it will give me the results. So this was about trim. It's very useful. So it just simplifies your life to another level. Then comes left and right. So if I have to extract the left part here, so I can just write equal to left. So I want the particular pin code address, right? Pin code is always 6 characters. So I'll just click on this, comma 6, close parenthesis. So it will give me, it will extract the left part, left 5 words, and just give me that, right? So I can just, again the same way, I'll just mention it, LEFT left, then RIGST right? So if I just click on the bottom right corner and then just drag and drop, it will just extract that particular pin from the cell that is there. So it can extract the values. What values I mentioned? It is 6, right? Because the pin code is of 6 digits. So from all the values, it will extract those 6 digits and paste it over here. Then the right one. So I'll just write equal to right. It will automatically suggest me. If I just forget after RI, it will give me the response that, okay, right is what you want to type. Then I'll click on this, comma. Then, so it says that you can add it in this form in bracket, but if you don't, then that's also okay. So I can see that in the entire dataset, the last 5 things that are there is, last 6 is county, right? County, it's written. So if I click on 6, close it, it will give me county. So it will extract the same word. Since it's consistent, it will just give me the last word that is there. So that is about left and right. Concatenate, if we talk about, now there's the first name, then there's last name, and if I just want them together, then I can just write equal to concat, right? Concatenate has concat as we discussed. Then I'll just click on this, comma this, close, it will give me the response. So same way, if I have to join multiple things, I can just drag and drop. Yeah, next is the length, in which if I have to know about what that particular string length is, so I can just write equal to len and then open parenthesis, the particular cell number A2, enter. It's 9 strings. And the same, so it includes space as well, right? So if this is given, if I just remove the space in one of these, my character will also, the length will also decrease. So it counts empty space as well, because space also occupies a string length. So yeah, this was about length. So next we will be talking about one of the most important aspects of Microsoft Excel, that is pivot tables. Now, you may or may not have heard about pivot tables, but either ways, pivot tables is one of the vital aspects, or we can say a backbone of Excel. This reduces your time in segregating data to another extent, because you don't have to worry about what to analyze, what to sum, create another table, create another sheet. Nothing is required. In one sheet, you can visualize everything using pivot tables and pivot charts. So let's first have a basic outlook of what pivot table is. So pivot table is a data processing tool, right? So in Excel, used for summarizing, analyzing, and presenting complex data, right? It summarizes data. That's its major task. Presenting, also using pivot charts. Now, what are the key features that are involved when we talk about pivot table? It's a drag and drop interface for organizing data, aggregates data for various insights, dynamic and customizable. So one of the most important aspect is that you can customize it, right, to anything, right? So if you want to sort values, you want to find the sum of values, you want to know, you can, if it is a column, you can move it into rows. If it is a row, you can move it into columns without touching the main data set. So you can have a second sheet in which all the pivot chart or the pivot table is created, So it's user friendly for non-technical users. So the same task, if you have to do it, you have to have a lot of process in play. But pivot charts make it a lot more easier in terms of segregating that data just by the use of mouse. You do not need keyboard to access that particular thing as well. So it's that easy. Then if you are asking why do you use pivot tables? So it's data summarization, easily summarize and reorganize the data in the form that is required. Quick insights. So it rapidly discover various patterns and trends that are there. Flexibility, it adjusts and experiments with those data views that are present. Then error reduction, minimize the manual data manipulation errors that are there, that exist. So these are the key benefits that are there of using the pivot tables, right? So let's just look at how these pivot tables are in Excel. So here we have a data set of various companies that are there and its quarterly revenues that are mentioned, right? So now we look at how to insert a pivot table use for this particular data set, right? So what will I do? I'll just select my data set, then I'll click on insert, and on the left hand side, you can see there's a tab of pivot table. So you can just click on that. Then it will ask you, a dialog box will appear, right? In which it states that create pivot table. So it will ask me to choose the data that you want to analyze, right? So I've selected my table. I selected the columns that I need. So it will just say conditional formatting because that's the name I have put here. Then it will select the rows that are there, right? It's basically the name of the sheet, then the selection of the rows and the columns that are there. Then choose where you want to use the pivot table, right? Where do you want it to place it, in the existing sheet or in a new worksheet? So I do not want my current data set to be disturbed. So I would want it to create a new worksheet and then you can add the thing. So I'll say okay. So it creates sheet 2 and it mentions that pivot table 2 is there, right? I can change the name into to my analysis, right? I can change the name to what I want, right? So now if I click on this, what I have, the main functionalities that are there, it says analyze. So basically it is used to analyze stuff. Then it says that insert slicer, insert timeline. We'll all see when we are building a dashboard. But before that, in a nutshell, what is this about? It is basically about using the pivot table. So now in my data set, right, if I see, I have the list of companies and the quarterly revenues that I mentioned. So I'll go to my pivot table. What would I need? Now think about it. I'll just select my company and put it at 2 rows because that I want it in the row format. Then I want, let's say, the sum of these things, right? Sum of quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, all that, right? It would have been better if the dates would be there with this because then adding would become easier. But nonetheless, let's see if I can, or let's just add everything to this. Okay. and companies 2 rows, right? Sum of quarter 1, sum of quarter 2, sum of quarter 3, right? Or wait, I'll do one thing. I'll just remove the quarter and I'll just, so this is for just a dummy thing to just not analyze anything per se, but just to know how the pivot table works. So then the sum will come all together of all those companies. Now let's just insert a pivot chart in this. So what we'll do is we'll select both the things and then we'll just have, I'll just go on analyze. And once you go in the analyze tab, if you see here, there's something known as pivot chart. I click on this. So what will it give me? It will basically give me the different types of charts that are there, right? There can be line chart, there can be pie chart, there can be bar chart, area chart, all these things. For simplicity, I'm using clustered column chart, or I can use this also, but I'll use clustered column chart. So it will give me all the analysis that are there. So it will give me all the companies that are there, some of the first quarter. So I can see the variations. I can even change it to the line chart if possible. So this is basically how a pivot table looks like. And this is how we can create a pivot chart. So this was not any analysis. It was just your visual representation of how to add the pivot table and create a chart out of it. Nothing else. So this is how you do it. Organizing data in Excel, right? Now, let's start with the process of building the dashboard. So in the first step, what we'll do is we'll look at the Microsoft Excel interface and also look at the data that we are going to work upon, right? Have a closer look in that. So I'll move to Microsoft Excel and let's start. So here we have the data set that consists of countries, product types, sold units, the cost, total profits, the date, and the total revenue. Now, what I have done here is I've mentioned various countries and various products that are there, right? So I've chosen here FMCG products that are commonly sold in these countries, right? Then I've added the number of units that are sold in that particular date, right? So it's roughly 300 or 400 odd rows of data, not a very large data for simplicity. So what we'll do is we'll try to build the dashboard from scratch. Now there are various elements to a dashboard. Number one, it should have things that you can filter out. Number two, there should be things that you can work upon, you can visualize using those dashboard. So what is that? We'll look at that. So what I'll do here is, since this data set consists of a lot of numbers as well as qualitative information, that is strings and not numbers. So I'll create another sheet and I'll just sort of make a dashboard. So basically we have a number of options in the timeline here. So we have home, insert, draw, page layout, formulas, data, review, view, and head. So what we'll do is, in order to build the dashboard, we'll consider this as, we'll rename it to business dashboard, right? So this would be our final one. This will be, so this will be our final dashboard over here, right? So I'll move it to the first one. From rows 1 to 4, what I'll do is, since it's our dashboard, okay, wait, I'll just merge this and I'll write. Okay, I'll write this. So I'll just change this text to, okay, 100 is a bit too big. We are just merge. Right, this would be good. I'll change the color of it to, let's say, okay, hard choice. I'll choose blue, right? So this will be our final dashboard interface that would be there. So after creating this basic flow of business dashboard, it's time for us to analyze that data. Now, what will I do? I'll go to data column. Now I see there are a lot of different elements that are there. So as I mentioned, the simplest way to edit anything is using a pivot table. So what would we do of looking at this pivot table is we would select our table or the entire spreadsheet, or we will just go to insert, then pivot table, right? It'll ask me the range that is there. So it's given the entire sheet. It asks me, is it for a new worksheet? I would say yes, it is for a new worksheet. So then this pivot table would be constructed. Now, before this, I want you to understand the type of data that we are dealing with. So we have country over here. So let's just look at this country. Then we have a various product lines, right? So what are the various product lines that are there? How would you see the various product lines? I'll just add a sort of filter over here. So it will become easier for you to understand. So let's see what are the various product lines that are there in the entire data set. So product line is column B. So in that you have face cream, face serum, hair gel, shampoo, soap bars and toner. So these are the various product line. Now this is for a lot of different countries, right? Let's look at what are the countries that are there. So it's basically Australia, Brazil, China, India and Russia. So these are the countries that are there. Then these are the qualitative information that are there. So basically, you should have that imagination that more or less these product lines of the country will remain as rows, right? It cannot be sum of values or sum of anything because this is qualitative, right? So when you're working on the pivot table, you have to have that idea of what type of things that you are using. Now we have total profit, you have total revenue, and you have cost, right? So it's just a nutshell of cost, total revenue, and profit. These are not accurate if you go by mathematical terms to calculate all these, but you can get a rough idea from this data set. Then you also have different dates that are there, right? So you can look at the various dates that is mentioned over here. So let's look at what are the years that it is talking about. So if I go here, it is of 2 years only. There's not much data here. So it's 2022 and 2023, right? So this is the data that is present. Now, what we will do over here is we'll have the things in mind from a business perspective. What would I need? If I'm looking forward to some things, I would want to know what are the different countries and the product lines. I would want to know this number of sold units per quarter, let's say, or per year. Then I would also need to look at the total profits that each product line is generating in each country, right? So these are the various visualizations what I can think of. So have your analysis prepared from that end, right? Now we'll work from backwards. What should the final dashboard look like, right? What do you think it should look like? Number one should be something related to profit. Number two should be something related to revenue or the monthly sales. Number three should be something that is related to the profits that are monthly, right? So product lines, country and all those things should be incorporated in that. So all these different aspects is what we would be looking at when we're building that particular dashboard. So in our first pivot table, so in our analysis, what we'll do is we'll name the first parameter in this, right? In the pivot table, that is profit. Profit in terms of the product type. So I'll write P type and what else? P type and country. So these are the two elements that I'll be looking at. So I'll have named it in that regard. So I'll click on my pivot table and then I'll add country. So the fields here, so if you can see, there are 4 field here. If there is any filter that I want to add, if there is any column that I need to add, or if there is any row that I need to add. So all these various elements that are there, I have to choose from, right? So in this scenario, I'll take the country parameter and I'll add it in the row column. So here in my pivot table, I have row labels that are the countries that are there, right? Then the second thing is, so if I have to see the profit by type and country, right? What will I do? The column that I want to add would be the product type, right? So here I have the country, here I have the product type. Now, what is the value that I'll be talking about here? I wanted to know about the profit. So the profit that is there would be, now I have to think, is it the filter or is it the value? I don't have anything to filter. So it will be the sum of the values that are there, right? So now in this case, I have my first pivot table ready. What is that? It is basically the countries, the labels, and it is the countries that are there. Then it is the product type that is there and the profit that it has, right? So the pivot table automatically summarizes what is there. So grand total of Australia in terms of all product lines is added. So this particular value is basically the addition of all these different values, right? If I double click on this, it will just give me, okay, this is the analysis of it, right? Now what I have to do, my first analysis is, you can ask me a good question that why did I not add date parameter to it? The simple answer is that in this particular pivot table that I want profit by, the type of product and the country would not really require the use of date, because I just want the combination of all the things that are there for both the years that are there. So it's basically the summary of the past 2 years. So I would not need the particular date feature in this one, but in other aspects, this is my first visualization, right? So in the other two, I will be adding the monthly or the date type in this as well, right? So now once we have done this, I'll select the pivot table. I'll go in insert. Then I have pivot chart right over here. So I'll click on pivot chart. Then I'll look at what would be the best suiting chart for me, right? So let's say that I need a clustered column, or let's say I need a 3D stacked image, right? So I'll click on OK. So now this will give me what are the different countries, that is Australia, Brazil, China, India, and Russia, right? So it will give me the sum of total sales, right? Now in this case, if I want to add the header of things, what will I do? I'll go on design. I'll click on this part called as add chart element. So I'll click on this. What I need is the labels of it, but before that I'll have the chart title. Where do I want it? Do I want it overlay, or do I want it over the top? I'll say over the top. So I'll write here profit in terms of P type and country, right? Now you can select the different elements over here. So in this particular chart, the 3D stack chart that I have built over here, I do not want the various button options that are present over here. What would I do? I'll right click on this and it says hide the field buttons on chart. So I'll just click on hide all. So now I have a pretty clear view of my chart, right? Again, I would also want to have the axis denoted over here. So I'll go to add chart element, add chart labels, or I'll go to axis titles, horizontal. So I'll write here country. And then again, similar way, I'll go here and I'll add in the vertical option, in which I'll add profit percentage. Right. So I'll add this, right? So if I have to look at other aspects or also, what I can do is I can just click on this. Now I want to copy this. So I'll just go to my business dashboard and I'll paste it. Right. So this will become my first visualization. So now that we have created our first pivot table, let's look at the second pivot table that we would be creating. That would be something related to monthly products that are sold. So in order to do that, let's again do the same process. Let's just select the entire table that we have. So the data set is of around 700 rows. So we'll insert, create the pivot table. Again, it asks me the same thing, that if I need to create in a new worksheet, I would say okay. Then I would write here monthly product sold. Okay. So in this case, what I will do right now is that I will add the two parameters that are there. One is the date. So now the date has all the three parameters. It has quarters that are being divided. We can see, we can just increase it. We have different elements that are there, right? So for 23, 24. So these are all the months. The second parameter is, since I have to see the product sold. So the products that are sold, that would be the units that are there, right? So I will click on the units to the values, and I'll get all the units that are sold in the month of September for all the different companies. Now what I'll do is, I'll select this, then I'll create the pivot chart out of it. So now what would you think is the best suited type of chart? Pause this for a minute and think about which one would be the best, right? Now, according to me, it should be something that is line chart, because it would depict the total amount in terms of the numbers and the months, right? So I'll click on OK. So now I have this. So I'll do the same thing that I did before. I'll just write here. I'll just click on this, right click, hide all buttons. So I'll just, for the time being, I'll just let it be like this, and I'll copy this, and in a business dashboard, I'll just paste it, right? So for hovering this particular graph, I can use Alt. So what it does, it basically sticks to certain places. So I can have a bit of gap in between or not, that depends on me. Let's just keep it close together, right? So now I have two visualizations in play. Now I would also want something else. Now think about what would be the third parameter that I would be considering, right? So I'll again create a pivot table. I'll again click on insert, pivot table, new worksheet, yes. This time around, I would want the profits to be displayed. So I would write monthly profits that are there, right? So once I've created this, I'll click on the dashboard, then I'll click on what would be the parameters now. Again, it would be the date column, and also this time it would be the profit that is there, total profit. So I'll have this in play, right? Again, I would do the same thing. I'll create the pivot chart out of it. Again, I'll go for the line one this time around, right? Or I can just depict in terms of quarter. Which one is suited? Let's just pick up with the this time around, let's just stick to, let's say, line itself. Line looks good. Cool. I'll click on the line option. Again, I'll do the same thing to it. I'll have the various settings change this time, the style change this time. Let's make it something, let's make it on a darker side this time. Perfect. So what I'll do is, I'll just create, I'll just right click. I again do not want the buttons to be displayed, and then I'll just write here in this side monthly profits. So now I have monthly profits as well in play. Now what I'll do is, I just don't want to do much changes to it. Now I'll just click on this, and I'll just, let's keep it in the middle this time. Okay. Yeah. Right. So this time around we can do this. So now this is our basic visualizations of profit of the products that are sold. I'll just type in this also. Products sold. Cool. So now I have these three visualizations in play. I'll just zoom out to show you. Now I need to add some more things, right? Now what will I do? I'll connect this to form various timelines, right? Now the visualization element is complete. Now what I'll do is I'll click on this, I click on analyze. So first I would want a timeline to be displayed, right? So now in this I have the months that are displayed and I can accurately attach it to the dashboard. Then what do I need next? So it displays me both. See, if you can see, I'll zoom in a bit. If you can see, it has 2022 mentioned and or 2023 mentioned, right? So it has all the months of these 2 years in which the sales have been reported. So in this case, what would I also need? There's something known as slicer options in which I can choose what I want. So I want country and product time to be displayed. So now I've added country as well as product type to it. Now what will I do next is, for example, if I have to choose any country to review, if I click on India, this graph changes to pertaining to India. If I click on China, it changes to China. Brazil, it changes to Brazil. But I don't want that. I want all three graphs should be in sync when I am building the dashboard, right? For example, if I have to look at Brazil, I just don't want to see what the products sold are there in Brazil, what is the volume, what is the profit in Brazil and the various product line. But I also want to see the monthly profits, the products sold, the units that are sold, everything I want to see at once. So what do I do in that case? I cannot add multiple slicer options there, right? It should be just one option and everything should change accordingly. So in that case, there is an option called, I'll right click on this country option because country is my main parameter in which I will be syncing all these three graphs together. So I'll right click on this. I'll click on something known as report connections. So in this, all the pivot tables that are there in the entire worksheet is mentioned over here. So I'll click on all the ones that I worked on, right? So these three have added. I'll click on OK. So now what will happen if I click on India? The graph will change accordingly. So September month in India, what are the units that were sold for what product? Now I can add, like, let's say hair gel, right? Hair gel in India, 180,000, right? This were the profits. Then you have the products that are sold, monthly profits in this of this particular product. So now the analysis is much more organized. It's much more structured to the approach that we are supposed to follow, right? So we can see the variations in all these things together as well, right? I can see everything together and I can see it in one by one analysis as well, right? So all the different things that we are supposed to look at can be easily looked upon. So this is something that is known as a dashboard in which you have one option, one change that you make and then the entire dashboard changes, right? So this was how you build a dashboard from scratch. This is how you analyze the different parameters that are there in a dashboard.